Bet he's not part of the rescue squad.
Welcome to the Retro Review, a look back on games past and current and review them. Today we look back on the Resident Evil 2 remake. Released in 2019, it was a remake of the classic survival horror game Resident Evil 2, released in 1998. The remake was an attempt to bring forth the past Resident Evil games with modern graphics, gameplay, and even certain storytelling elements for the new generation of gamers who had never experienced the original. The last mainline entry in the critically complex game, Resident Evil 6, left the once great horror franchise at a crossroads of sorts. The game wasn't bad, and something could truly be made and built from that, but ultimately became a rushed and rather cobbled together game that promoted quantity over quality. Capcom largely shifted, I believe, for two reasons. One was the oversaturation of the action shooter market being dominated by other franchises that had a real stranglehold on the market. Call of Duty, Halo, etc., etc. Personally, I'm a big fan of the Rainbow Six games. And a renewed interest in survival horror that had been missing for really quite a long time, dominated in parts by indie horror games. This might be a bad example, but even a game like Five Nights at Freddy's dominated and was something people either wanted to see or play, even if what I'm explaining is a bit of an oversimplification. This shift really started with the production of Resident Evil 7, taking the franchise in a first-person perspective. I also think they had begun development of the Resident Evil 2 remake that I can remember. I remember it being announced as far back as 2015. Now, before the release of Resident Evil 7, there was worry about the direction that the franchise was going. Although remaking games isn't new to Capcom specifically, remaking one of not only the greatest survival horror games of all time, but truly one of the greatest games in general of all time was a bit of a gamble. Yet, once the release of Resident Evil 7, it was clear they wanted to go survival horror. Once 7 came out and the anticipation for Resident Evil 2 only grew and grew, it was, in a way, outside of 7, the real rebirth and the real coming out party for what Resident Evil has largely been doing today, serving as the catalyst for Resident Evil's rebirth as a survival horror franchise. But did it land? That's the question. First, we will cover the game's story, graphics, and gameplay to see if it did. The story of the remake largely follows the original game with several deviations for both the direction of the game was going and fleshing out certain characters to fit the narrative much better. It follows either Leon Kennedy, a rookie police officer where he is headed to Raccoon City for the first day on the force, or Claire Redfield, the sister of the first game's protagonist and series legend and mainstay, Chris Redfield. Now, due to circumstances, the two meet up and enter the city, unaware that it has largely been overrun by the Walking Dead via the Umbrella Corporation, a pharmaceutical company that creates and uses bioweapons for research and effectively as a means of control, and as a series of enemies uses it for their own world domination and advancement of the human race. Once inside the city, they are separated by an 18-wheeler and go their separate ways to meet up at the police station. Both meet several people that they interact with in the story. For Leon, it's largely Ada Wong, a secret agent and mercenary. For Claire, a young girl, Sherry Birkin, separated from her parents. They uncover the mystery of what is happening in the city, only to eventually reunite and escape with their lives as they would walk away in the sun. Now, generally, the original game's story was sweet and simple, and it is translated here to more modern age where the game does for the most part take advantage and is able to flesh out certain things or change certain aspects to better fit the narrative. Most notably is the expansion of certain characters like Marvin, who in the previous game literally had just one cutscene for him before he turned into a zombie. This time around, he is literally there saving your butt and trying to get you out of the police station to survive. With the graphical improvements which come from the new RE engine, more on that later, they're really able to give these people real emotion in the story that, and hasn't really been seen in any game before. Because of this, and the general change in characterization of most of the cast, this is a very thoroughly well done and acted story, even if it still follows the same very basic story outline and structure. Sweet and simple. Leon is still a good guy cop and just wants to do right and really just do his job and duty. Claire is more fierce and I think aggressive at times, but is still deeply caring and I think is more relatable in this way. looking over Sherry like a motherly figure at times, and despite certain scenes being a little over the top for her, it doesn't get cheesy or completely unbelievable. Annette and Ada are the other shout-outs in this new characterization as well. Ada is more akin to what her future version would be like in subsequent games. Annette is probably one of the more subtle and standout performances, and well done. She is believable as a mother who is choosing her work, believing it to be the most important thing in saving the world in her eyes than even her own daughter. In the end, despite still choosing her work, and even though she saves her daughter, I still empathize with her and can see many who would make that choice. And don't even get me started on Chief Irons, who is really just a ruthless bastard throughout this entire game.
Claire!
Sherry, you come with me now, or say goodbye to Claire.
Okay, I'll go. You better be taking me to my mom.
Absolutely.
Don't listen to him, he's full of shit.
Overall, I think this is an adaptation worth playing and revisiting again. Story-wise, it is well done and well thought out. The only real downside is there's no real B scenario for either campaign. I mean, there's a B scenario, but it's a little half-baked at best, and the only real difference is the final boss that you have to beat to get the true ending, and then obviously just moving some things around just to make it a little bit different and a little more complicated. Other than that, this game is an example of how you do a remake story, pretty much outside of the original Resident Evil remake. Now, graphically, I don't even know where to start. This game looks truly magnificent in just about every conceivable way. The RE engine was used and is, in my view, looking to be pushed to its pure graphical limits at times, but not in a bad way. Visually, this is just a beautiful game. Whether it's the level design, small details, character designs, and the way they are able to truly express their emotions is really next level. I cannot get over the facial animations in this game, which is a little strange because RE7, has basically a bit of a smaller issue in the finer details of their facial animations, which I'll get to when I talk about, RE7, but I mean, honestly, like, LA Noire has got nothing on the details and emotions these characters are able to truly express. If it wasn't for the game being able to do that, this game probably would greatly suffer, and instead, it's just an added benefit to both the overall story and experience to enjoy. The absolute highlight, obviously, is the police station. It's beautifully made and rendered, lively, and just felt lived in. Even the sewer level, actually, I'll even argue, is not bad to look at. It's, at times, really just disgustingly beautiful. Where this game really shines, though, I think, is ultimately the enemy design and how the combat looks. The enemies are genuinely nerve-wracking to look at, whether it's the face, their eyes looking hauntingly at you as they're stumbling towards you, seeing you as only meat for consumption. Your first liquor appearance genuinely gave me a heart attack when I first played because it was creepy and so well hidden in the environment, and it's just an example at how this game looks and adds to the atmosphere like that. Mr. X and G. Birkin are also the obvious standouts as their designs are somewhat horrific. I remember getting the strategy guide for the old Resident Evil 2 game and seeing the artwork for G. Birkin and thinking that is the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life. Truly unsettling and unnerving for me. And while G. Birkin and Mr. X don't give me that same consistent unsettling fear, they are scary completely in their own right in just how they look. This game is just beautiful. Some limitations possibly with the RE engine, and I think certain aspects of the environment either not being rendered as well or just nowhere near as detailed as it could be. Some things just, are really bland in certain parts of the game that you really don't notice because I think the lighting and overall every other detail is so detailed that you'd really kind of just don't notice it sometimes. but some of these things do pop up every now and then that I do notice sometimes when I'm playing this game over and over and over again, and I'm noticing just little inconsistencies in certain aspects of basically just how the graphics look. But generally speaking, it's barely noticeable when playing a quick campaign, and almost not much to really even critique overall at this point. This is just a very well made and beautiful looking game. Now, gameplay wise, I should first note about the gameplay that it is completely fluid and very responsive. It's easy and incredibly accessible for a lot of people, and incredibly fun. But I do know a lot of people that prefer tank controls in older horror games, for instance, that of that ilk, that would classify those games as true survival horror. You know, to each their own in terms of what constitutes survival horror. I'm a simple man who can see plenty of definitions that meet their criteria as survival horror. Mine are effectively very simple and basic, just item resource management, forcing you to plan ahead in terms of said resource management, and just simple gameplay that is not too difficult or not too easy either. Just the right balance to make enemies difficult but not overwhelming, where every encounter can go smoothly but also go very wrong and end your playthrough if you're not careful enough. The remake, I think, attempts to bridge a lot of those ideas with more modern and fluid gameplay. The combat doesn't have to do, judo kicks like in the sequels to come, but is more manageable in terms of avoiding zombies and encounters and maneuvering that might make this game a little bit easier than most survival horror games. That being said, they do hit the right notes in regards at least to item management and how you implement those resources in the future of your playthrough. Like, for instance, do you take an herb everywhere you go, like myself, because I'm a klutz of a gamer, or do you risk it to get a key item piece and possibly less back travel than, if you had that item? Ammo isn't infinite, and do you save your bullets for boss encounters or from Mr. X if he is chasing you? The choices in that regard give this game replayability more so than other games.
Shit!
Just having to think, I think, really makes games and survival horror games of this ilk fun, enjoyable, and replayable, intense, and really actually constructively and critically makes you want to replay the game over and over and over and over again. RE2 and I think a lot of these Resident Evil games of this particular ilk and the actual more survival horror versions of it tend to do this extremely well. The inclusion of Mr. X as an enemy that follows you around looking for you during the RPD section is genuinely one of the single most stressful times, especially when playing on harder difficulties that I've ever had basically playing a game. That added kick in the butt makes this game far more difficult and forces you to make choices that you otherwise wouldn't make. It really forces you to learn the layout of the RPD and really formulate a plan on the spot. Now, combat is some of the best and most terrifying parts of this game. It's difficult, but not overwhelming. Timing shots and aiming can be very stressful if you want to have accurate shots, as it takes time to focus the reticle to take down enemies. Even with better weapons, even getting the shotgun or grenade launcher, which in most games will make this game easier, only in my view makes the game much harder. Because by the time you get those weapons, you're facing more challenging enemies, and ammo is effectively far more difficult to come by. This game can be very challenging, but the kind of challenge that you can achieve if you focused and put forth the effort to do it. You may lose a lot over and over and over again, but it's not so insurmountable, that you have to forcibly climb this hill. Like, it's not like a Dark Souls game. But even a Dark Souls game is one of those examples of it's difficult, but if you do things very well, perfectly, and do it precisely, you can achieve it and you can get it done. Now, did this game land? Safely and soundly, and on time. Resident Evil 2 Remake is a fantastic game, and a game that is more really of a brilliant reimagining if we're going to be very specific to what remakes actually are. Not a bad thing, but the original Resident Evil remake, I think, is an actual remake. Really updated to the best that it can be, whether it's graphics, gameplay. I mean, it's literally just the same game, just with better graphics, 1 or 2 added storylines and sections, but ultimately, it's the same from beginning to end, largely. The RE2 remake is more, I think, of a brilliant reimagining, with updated gameplay, graphics, and a story that really pays homage and represents the older story well in the modern era and context. Is it a perfect game? It's pretty darn close, so technically no, but it is fun, tense, and despite difficult at times gameplay and, with the occasional 1 or 2 graphical hiccups that maybe, that might throw you off for a little bit, it's pure and completely fun entertainment, and one of the few games I would happily buy at full price. Because of this game, for better or worse, Capcom found the success and the real motivation to remake all the games, it seems like, and at the very least, it's more content and really just more Resident Evil, which is always a plus for the gaming community. It lands very, very smoothly. Like and subscribe.
So, is it over?
I don't know. But if it's not, we'll stop it. Whatever it takes.
Yeah, you damn right we will.
As long as we stick together, we'll be fine. Come on.
Hey, you guys can adopt me.
Adopt you?
We can get a puppy.
Puppy.
And a parrot.
Parrot.
I always wanted pets, but my mom said they're too messy.
Next up on this boring Wednesday is a song to get your blood pumping.